and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. Well, it's fall, and every fall, as I drive around the country, I smell a mysterious odor, Darren.
It's the smell of money?
Yeah. Dad always used to talk about how it's the smell of money, manure. I always used to think it's the smell of lost money, because if I can smell the manure, that means something's going up in the air instead of going in our ground. We're going to talk about that a little bit today.
One of the things we definitely want going in our ground is potassium. We're going to talk about this very important nutrient and how soil tests can be quite misleading.
Well, as always, we have a difficult to control weed of the week. That's coming up later in the show. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
Spiders, Asian lady beetles, moths of all kinds. There's all kinds of bugs trying to get into my house this fall. What are we going to do about that?
Well, Darren, the only reason they're trying to get into your house is because
it's nice and warm and comfy and friendly.
Well, I was thinking just because you didn't spray Tempo, and that's what you're supposed to do. So we kind of joke around about this a little bit, but it's real simple anymore. If you want to stop bugs in your house or just around the outside of your house, there's this product called Tempo, and the nice thing about it is it comes from the chrysanthemum flower. So it's like sprinkling flowers all around your house or even in your house.
I would say it doesn't exactly smell like flowers, Brian. It doesn't really have an odor to it. We're not trying to mislead you here, but it's using a natural poison that's found in a chrysanthemum flower, just the synthetic reproduction
when you say
of it.
Poison, that sounds bad. It's not poisonous to human beings. It's not going to kill a human being, but just like some people are allergic to flowers, it's possible you could be allergic to this particular chemistry, any of the pyrethroid insecticides, so you might get a rash or something like that. It's unlikely, but that could happen.
Well,
so I guess I'm just trying to say, you know, when you talk about poison, it's poisonous to certain insects. So that's not to human beings.
It's safe
or
to spray
animals.
in your house, and in fact, if you read the label, you could spray it in hospitals, in restaurants, all these things. The important thing for you around your home, with your kids, with your pets, and yourself, is you just want to make sure when you're spraying it on, you're using personal protective equipment, you wear rubber gloves and that kind of thing. Spray it around the outside of your house. You can spray it right on your siding. I like to put it right on the sill of my door, right around windows, any place where pests could get into your house. And then I'll also spray out in my yard a little bit too to try and control bugs out in the yard, like the crickets that you may be hearing today. Boy, there are a lot of crickets out this morning. We need some Tempo right here in this grass.
Well, when you think of tall grass too, in addition to crickets, I think right away about ticks. And I know my kids are concerned about ticks. Well, here again, Tempo will control ticks. Now, we're not here today to try to sell you on this product, Tempo. We're just trying to sell you on the fact that if you've got bugs, there are ways to control them both outside your house and inside your house relatively safely. But as soon as we say, oh, it's a pesticide and we're going to spray inside the house, people start panicking. They get so concerned about this. So again, I just want to stress to you, this is a product that comes from a flower. It's nothing that's that terribly dangerous to humans, so just look up on the label and you can see the safety issues yourself, but we're not that concerned about it. We spray it right inside our own homes.
Well, one comment I'd make too is it's much better to start off by stopping those bugs from getting into your house rather than having a whole bunch of bugs already in your house and then trying to kill them. When you think about spiders and all the cobwebs they can make, you think about Asian lady beetles, when you smash those things, there's a yellow streak wherever that was.
Well, hey, I want to go back. Yeah, I want to go back to the spider thing too, because this is something when we used to have livestock around that our dad was real big on making sure we didn't have spiders and cobwebs, because then typically we were going to have a lot more disease issues with the livestock. It's the same thing in your house. If your house isn't clean, if you don't have the insects under control, you are much more likely to get diseases, and that's way more harmful and way more risky than spraying a little bit of pesticide in and around your house.
So when it comes to fall, there are a lot of bugs that are going to try and make it in so they can overwinter, so they have a safe place to be. Stop them before they get in your house. There's plenty of places for them out in nature for them to try and overwinter. They don't need to do it in your home.
Well, another thing you may want to be stopping is our Weed of the Week. It's a tough one, especially for wheat production, but we'll tell you how to stop it on your farm coming up later in the show.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
You expect a lot from this seed, and as it grows through each stage of development, Agroculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, AgroLiquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agroculture Liquid Fertilizers.
Whether you're planting, spraying, or harvesting, there's nothing more important in farming than getting it right from the start. At Case IH, we got our engines right the first time with our SCR technology that maximizes horsepower while meeting tough emission standards. While other companies are switching technology, Case IH already has over 30,000 proven engines in the field. The world of farming is changing. Be ready with a proven leader in efficient power. Case IH.
Earlier in the show, I just made the comment about how our dad would always say, you know, it's the smell of money when you smell manure. But I don't think about that at all. I think about how it's the smell of lost money. Think about what manure actually is when you smell it. What are you smelling? You're smelling ammonia, or at least partially ammonia. Well, what's in ammonia? Nitrogen. I don't want the ammonia going up in the air. I don't want the nitrogen going up in the air. I want that nitrogen going in the ground so it can help my next crop. So we're going to talk today a little bit about how you can do that on your farm and also how you prevent other nitrogen loss, manure loss, going down even deeper into the soil.
Well, there's a lot more nutrition in manure than just nitrogen. When we think about the phosphorus, the potassium, the micronutrients, the secondary nutrients, all those things in manure. And when we're looking at soils where we're getting manure applications every year, we're very concerned about where those nutrient loads are going in that soil profile. And when we talked last fall about some soil testing that we had done, looking at every inch going down in the top foot, we're seeing a lot of stratification of nutrients up in the top part of that profile, mainly in the top 2 or 3 inches of soil. We want to get that nutrition spread down a little bit deeper for a number of reasons that we'll talk about today.
Okay, most importantly, where we want to start with this manure thing is we want you to test your manure every single time. You have to know what you've got for nutrients in that manure before you can apply it. And not only the normal nutrients you'd think about, but also salt. We don't want too much salt put out there. I'll just give you an example even on our own farm. Here's what we found over the years. We're much further ahead if we cut our manure rate in half a lot of times and then supplement with some commercial fertilizer as opposed to running a full load of manure, and that's all we use for a fertility program, because then we end up getting too much salt on that. And then the other thing is there's so much good stuff in manure besides just the nutrients. Things like beneficial bacteria and fungi, we want to get those on more acres. Manure is a great thing. We just don't want you to overdo it.
Well, one of the things that can be overdone a little bit is putting that phosphorus out on top of the ground. And that's one of the things where I'm concerned with manure application. I'd like to see it injected deeper. When we talked about stratification a little bit earlier, that's one thing, just to get the nutrient load spread out. for manure management programs. I think that's very good to get some of that phosphorus down deep. But also, if we ever see any kind of erosion or runoff, or you get a big time rain after you put on that manure, we don't want phosphorus leaving our fields. By putting it deeper in our soil, that's where it's going to be safe and do the most good for your crops.
Okay, so Darren mentioned manure management plan. If you are a large livestock producer, undoubtedly you have to do a manure management plan with your county or your state. And the most important thing that they're looking at there is phosphorus load, because that's the #1 water quality issue we have in the United States today is excess phosphorus. You get too much phosphorus in the water, then you have more algae. That's a big problem. But since phosphorus is non-mobile in the soil, it's not going to leach down. It's not going to get down in tile lines. It's not going to get down in the groundwater. We're not concerned about that at all. What we're concerned about is if it's in the top inch of soil and that top inch runs down the hill, well, all of a sudden, your phosphorus moved right along with it. So that's the reason why we want you to inject this manure down a little bit deeper. If you inject all your manure down at 9 or 12 inches deep, then you've got no issues with the manure management plan, because they can come out and test your soil 0 to 6 inches and you didn't add any phosphorus to that ground. So it's an awesome deal, and it's something that we want you to definitely consider. The only drawback to that a lot of guys will say is, well, now you're getting all my nitrogen down deeper, so now I have more risk for leaching.
And there are a lot of things that get talked about like that, but it's simply not true. When you're putting nitrogen down deeper in the soil, there isn't as much oxygen down there, and we aren't going to see that nitrogen convert into a leachable form very quickly at all.
Well, that leachable form is nitrate, and that's what we do worry about. So we don't want you to over-exceed nitrogen in any form beyond what your soil can hold. So if your soil will only hold 150 pounds of nitrogen, don't be throwing a bunch of manure out there that's got 300 pounds of nitrogen. That's not doing anybody any good. You've got to be real careful on what you're applying out there for nutrients, and don't exceed what your soil will hold.
Well, the other thing you can do is use stabilizer type products, something like More Than Manure, right? With your manure as you're putting it out there, that way we can hold things like the phosphorus and we can protect it, and we can also hold the nitrogen in that correct form, that we don't see problems with leaching, and we have more time for our crop to pull in that nitrogen safely.
Okay, let's talk finally about where we started, which was the smell of manure. So the most important reason why we want you to inject manure on your ground, not spread it over the top, work it in a few days later, whatever. We want you to inject manure as much as you possibly can. It's because we want to protect that nitrogen, that ammonia that is in that manure, so it doesn't go up in the air. We want that to somehow find a way in the soil and attach itself. So inject that down deeper. You're going to have a lot less smell, so it's not going to bother the neighbors as much or the city people as much. But most importantly, you saved a bunch of money on your farm. Instead of now having to apply more nitrogen with commercial fertilizer, you save that nitrogen by injecting it down just a little bit deeper and keeping it in your field rather than having it go up in the air.
Well, there are a lot of things in the fall that we get excited about. Of course, harvest is going to be fun, but the other thing is we get to take that manure that's in a lagoon all summer and it's ready to get out in fields. We get to put that fertility back on our farms. I love manure as a fertility source for my crops. It works fantastic. What we're talking about today is just how to use it in the best possible way to get the maximum nutrient load out of that manure and into our crop, and then to do it safely for our environment as well.
Well, another important thing if you want to raise a great crop is controlling our weed of the week. We'll tell you how to stop it on your farm coming up later in the show.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello-designed chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation, because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's ahead above the rest.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Upgrade your trailer to electric with the Rolltech electric system from AgriCover. Strong, flexible pivot arms and motor mount rotate and telescope, allowing the roll tube to rise and flex over heaped loads. The positive automatic lock is impossible to back off to control the flow of grain. This integrated system uses one wireless remote to operate up to 10 tarps and hoppers, keeping your driver out of the dust, rain, and harm's way. See the Rolltech system in action at an AgriCover dealer near you.
You expect a lot from this seed, and as it grows through each stage of development, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, AgroLiquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
Perhaps the most misunderstood nutrient out there is potassium.
When we think about soil tests and plant tissue tests, a lot of times they don't jive, Brian, and I would say this leads to a lot of misunderstanding. Like for example, this field right here, if we look at a potassium soil test in the parts per million, it's gonna say high. You know, we're in the high range, and that leads us to believe when potassium prices are pretty high, we'd say, you know, if I'm gonna cut back somewhere, this soil tests pretty high in potassium, maybe I'll cut back here.
But here's the problem. In a lot of cases, potassium out in fields is not in a good form that's available for plants. It's in the form of a rock. And how quickly does rock break down and become available to your crop? Not very fast. The other issue that we've got in a lot of the Midwest is we have very high levels of calcium. We have very high levels of magnesium. Well, if you've got very high levels of calcium and magnesium and only kind of moderately high levels of potassium, that potassium just isn't going to get into the plant at the rate that it should. So even though a lot of soil tests will say high in parts per million, the appropriate test that a farmer should look at is base saturation.
When it comes to base saturation, it's a ratio of 5 nutrients. It's calcium and magnesium, as Brian has talked about, and potassium, of course, that's our topic today, but also sodium and hydrogen. When we look at those 5 nutrients, it gives us a indication of the holding sites in our soil and what's on them. And if we see a lot of those holding sites tied up with the calcium and magnesium, that doesn't leave a lot of room for the potassium.
So with the potassium number, what we want to see is in the range of 4% to 8% potassium. If we're seeing numbers like 1 or 2 or even 3% potassium, what's most likely going to happen is, yes, you probably have some potassium in your soil, but not enough is getting into the plant. And so when you go and do plant tissue analysis next year, and what we always suggest to guys is do it over a period of time. Do it for 8 or 10 weeks in a row in one particular spot in the field, and you'll most likely find that your potassium levels are going to be low to deficient.
One of the things with soybeans that they need is high amounts of potassium, even more so than what a 200 bushel corn crop needs. 60 bushel beans need a lot of potassium. So if you want to get there to 60 or 80 or even more bushels on soybeans, you have to have a lot of potassium that's available for your crop. With, as Brian was mentioning, potassium in the form of a rock, it's not going to release quick enough. And with soybeans, once we get into August, they're really starting to put on pods. They're pulling lots of nutrition in to pack into that nutrient-dense seed. And potassium is one of the most important things. And we just can't draw enough potassium out of a lot of these soils quickly enough to do that. That's why our soybean yields are suffering, where corn is pulling a little bit of potassium all the way through the year. So even if we don't have a lot of available potassium that will come available in a single day, for example, since we need a little bit all year long, we can still have a successful corn crop in some of those situations.
So here's the whole thing. We know that potassium fertilizer is expensive. In our opinion, it's way too expensive. I think it's ridiculous. Potassium or potash should be half, if not even 1/3 the price that it is today. But nevertheless, it is what it is. It costs what it does. So you have to say, all right, how many dollars do I really need to invest in this particular fertilizer or in any fertilizer? So that's the reason why we do soil tests, the reason why we do plant tissue analysis. We want to find out, are you actually short on potassium or not? And don't just listen to people that'll say, well, you have X number of parts per million, you're good. That's not enough. You need to do base saturation tests for soil tests. You need to do plant tissue analysis and find out what your crop really needs. All I can tell you is that on our farm, when we've taken more dollars on our fertilizer budget and put towards potassium, we've increased our yields. And we've helped a lot of other farmers do that across the Midwest. Potassium is the most deficient major nutrient for most farmers, is what we found across the Midwest. So you can put potassium out in the fall. We do a fair amount of dry potassium, dry potash. We like putting potassium a little bit deeper in the ground than a lot of guys. We want to get our levels good all the way down to 12 inches, if not even deeper. The other thing we want you to consider is doing some liquid potassium in the spring, right in the furrow, doing it also in a 2x2. Get multiple forms of potassium out there. Get lots more potassium out there so your crop isn't suffering from lack of this major nutrient.
Now with potassium, we like to put it down deeper. We're typically in our strip till situation putting potassium down about 8 or 10 inches deep. What we're seeing is corn plants and other crops are pulling that potassium out. A lot of it goes up into the stalk. And where we've got good levels of potassium availability, we're getting a much better standing crop. A lot of times when we see issues with corn that's lodgy, the first thing that we'll blame is the hybrid, but the first thing I look at is what's your potassium program? Are you getting enough potassium out there? Because if we're short, that's where a lot of times we see spindly stalks that don't really stand up until fall.
Well, once again, we think that it's very important, if you want to have great yields, that you really focus on this potassium thing and don't just look at parts per million, look at base saturation test, and then also do some plant tissue analysis as you go throughout the year. I know you may not have ever done it before, but it's really important if you want to have a good idea where you best need to invest your fertilizer dollars.
Well, speaking of investments, if you have our Weed of the Week, you definitely need to invest in a good control program. We'll show you how to stop it coming up right after this.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
You work to protect your farm's legacy and to keep it going. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our Weed of the Week is Downy Brome. Some people call it cheatgrass. Others say, no, that's not cheatgrass. True cheat is cheatgrass. We still call Downy Brome cheatgrass on our farm though.
You know, I look at it this way, Brian. There's just a lot of misidentification of grass weeds, whether it's Downy Brome, Japanese brome, true cheat, whatever the case may be. A lot of people see that, hey, I got this grass problem, it's out in my winter wheat, I'm just gonna call it cheat.
Okay, so here is our program if you have cheatgrass on your farm, or Downy Brome, which is our Weed of the Week today. Start with a good pre-emerge herbicide. That would be Prepare. 0.2 ounces in the higher pH ground. If you have lower pH ground, 0.3 ounces, the full rate is what you're gonna wanna run with.
And if there is any Downy Brome that's up, you mix some Roundup in, it does an awesome job. If we just had Roundup Ready wheat bran, this would be really simple, but we don't, so we've got to do a number of other things.
Okay, then the very best product after that is going to be Maverick post-emerge in the fall. We wanna control this Downy Brome in the fall. We want 2 shots on it in the fall. So a pre-emerge and then a post-emerge in the fall, and you should pretty well wipe out your Downy Brome issue. Maverick's the very best, but it also has the longest rotational restriction to other crops. After that, I would say PowerFlex is the way to go. There's certainly Olympus out there too. I like the PowerFlex because we have a lot less rotational restriction when we're going to go to some of these different broadleaf crops like soybeans.
Well, one of the most important things you said there is you can only control this weed in the fall. So you have to take a couple of shots at it in the fall. In the spring, we just get suppression. It's just too well established that we can't completely wipe it out in most cases in the spring. So you have to be after it in the fall. Now, if you don't get a lot of rainfall and that cheat comes up or that Downy Brome comes up much later, that gets to be a little more challenging. But if you do get a little bit of moisture in the fall to get that coming, it's awesome if you can wipe it out then. That way in the spring, your crop can just grow and choke out any other weeds.
But if you don't control it in the fall, you do at least have options in the spring. You certainly could use PowerFlex in winter wheat. In spring wheat, Gold Sky is probably the best way to go. So there are choices, but again, you're probably only going to get suppression.
Now, one of the toughest grasses coming up this fall could be Downy Brome. Get it under control on your farm. Take 2 shots at it this fall, and if you need to, you may have to take another shot at it again next spring.
That's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrek technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
As soybean harvest begins, here's a short checklist of some major points to look for. Starting at the front of the combine and working your way back, check the sickle sections on your head and replace them if they're worn. Then look at the teeth on the reel, make sure they're all in good shape. If your reel is bent up or missing some teeth, get it ready to go. Next, take a look at your rotor or rasp bars to make sure there are no problems. Without these in good condition, you're bound to plug up your combine in one spot or another eventually. Make sure your concaves are in good shape too. New concaves might improve your seed quality. Look at your belts next. Make sure they're tight and without cracks or weather stress. After that, tighten your chains and inspect your paddles on your conveyors and the flightings on all augers. If your chains, paddles, and flightings are significantly worn, get them replaced now. You don't want to take several hours during a good combining day to replace something that could have been done before the season started. As far as your sieves are concerned, be sure they're not damaged in any way. If you typically have a lot of trouble with pods and soybeans, a sized bean screen and a lower sieve is a must. One last word of advice we'll give you is this: there's always time for maintenance. If you don't take care of your equipment, pretty soon you have to fix or replace it. So grease your machinery every morning, oil the chains on the combine, check the oil, and do whatever you have to do to keep your combine in good shape. That's it for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
At Titan Machinery and Case IH, we offer better solutions for all your production needs. It's more than our job, it's who we are. We are parts. We are service. We are training. And most importantly, we are here for you. In any season, for every reason, we've got you covered. Case IH and Titan Machinery, better solutions.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
If you want to take your farm to the next level, you have to go where the in-field research is being done. Hi, I'm Darren Hefty with Ag PhD TV. One of the field tours that Brian and I have enjoyed the most each summer is the North Central Research Station Tour in Michigan. There are over 500 acres of replicated trials in corn, soybeans, wheat, and numerous other crops. You'll learn more about crop fertility in a few hours than most farmers will in a decade. Visit agroliquid.com for all the details, and maybe we'll see you there.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for this week's show, but be sure to tune in again next time for another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Organic matter improves soil structure and tilth. It improves microbial activity and soil life. Organic matter allows soils to hold more water and nutrients for your crop. To learn more about building it, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.